and welcome back to another episode of Game Night Date Night, and we are now on episode 14. So, Game Night Date Night is in collaboration with Games and Couples. And Couples concentrate on couples counseling, and they utilize board game quite a bit in their counseling sessions. And one of the things that they've done is they've created a rating system to help couples figure out which game would best suit their need at the time. Now, keep in mind in this rating system that 1 is not bad and 5 is not good. It just depends on where you're at. And it rates this on 3 different aspects. The first one is conversation and connection potential. So based on the game, how much of an opportunity is there to catch up and connect with your partner? Some games are very intense. There's a lot going on and you don't have a whole lot of time to chit chat about the day or how things are going. While other games are a little bit more relaxed, they're a little bit slower paced, and then you can definitely hold a conversation. The next thing that it rates on is the getting to know you. How much gets revealed from your partner as you're playing the game? There are games where you're doing your own things on your side, they're doing their own things on their side. There's very little interaction, so you're not learning a whole lot about your partner through the game. While other games definitely are very much more revealing in the decision that they're making and how they'll handle the game. And the final thing that the rating that they rate on is potential for hurt feelings and conflict. Let's face it, a lot of time the games are competitive and we are striving to have one winner. That means there has to be a loser. So depending on how the game comes about, that could offer more opportunities for hurt feelings. But there are some games that are completely cooperative where everybody's working together towards the same goal, and then the chances for hurt feelings then would be lower. So this past month of every week, I go through Game of the Week and then we put it through the rating system and talk a little bit about how it all works. And this month, I wanted to concentrate on campaign games. Me and my spouse, we love to do campaigns. Now, I enjoy the campaign games. I find playing it with any other players is very difficult. It's nice with my spouse because he's always around, so we can easily, when we have a moment, say, okay, let's do the next scenario or let's do the next chapter and pull it out. And then it's really neat to see the progression. We're developing this together. We're kind of seeing it through, and then it's just a sense of accomplishment. So this month I talked about games that has that campaign element a little bit more. The first one is Destinies. Destinies is so good. So it's very story driven, but it's app driven. So a lot of the aspect of the game happens on the app. And what I really like about this particular game is that it gets passed around when it's your turn. So a lot of times when you have an app-driven game, you have the one person that's controlling the device and everybody else is just kind of waiting around, sitting and participating when they get the chance. So it can be exclusive. With this one, it's your turn. You have the app. You do a few things. Some stuff are for everybody to know. Some stuff are private for you. In this game, you each play as a different character. Your character is going to have the ultimate goal of what they're trying to accomplish, and it can get about that 2 ways. And on your card, you'll have your purple destiny and your yellow destiny, depending on which way you're going to go about it. Now, you can kind of thrive to work on both and then kind of accomplish one before the other and then finish the main goal. There's a lot of different scenarios, so the story changes every time, and there's a lot of expansion that'll bring in new stories as well. But let's have a look at the rating system on this one. So for conversation, connection, potential, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5. It is story driven, but because it's not like you read out loud, it's not a audio you're listening to, so you can interrupt the game if you want to. As you're doing other things, you can have a conversation and have a bit of a little bit of catching up, but there is a story going on, so it's not a whole, it's like, oh, you won't believe what happened at my work today, and then kind of get into a whole big story. You're already in the middle of a story. So it's a little bit lower for that reason. On the getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. Some information are hidden. You may not know what your partner is doing, but a lot of the stuff, they'll kind of, it's revealing as to what they're making the decision on, what they're trying to accomplish, and what they're what they're thriving to do and what makes them decide what they want to do. There's a lot of decision making in this game, so it's interesting to see how they'll make those decisions. And then for hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5. You're living the same story and you kind of are part of a different aspect of that story. It's not a cooperative game. You have your own goals of what you're trying to do. Some of the stuff that you do could potentially interfere a little bit with the other players, like where if you've collected an item, it's like, oh darn it, I could have used that. But other than that, you really are living your own story while they're doing their own story, and it's kind of a race, trying to be the first one to finish your ultimate destinies. So because of that, there is less hurt feelings potential, just because you may not be crossing paths. Let me show you some pictures of this game, and I've got to say I am impressed with this one. So it has the map and it has the board. Now the map, there's a lot of different tiles. They're more like cards. They're not tile in thickness, but they're cards. But there's a lot of different cards. So in the different scenarios, you have a whole new map, and they're double-sided. And I'll show you closer pictures of the map. They're double-sided, so until you went onto the location, it's kind of hazy. You don't really see all the details. Once you go there, you reveal it, and then the app will keep track of, oh, you arrive at this location and so is over here. So then you would put the little character on it, and then you notice that there's something in the corner there, and then you would put a little token to kind of show that there's something to interact with there. It is so interactive and it looks great. A lot of time as you're going through the adventure, you will get to a position where you need to do some sort of test. There are 3 categories you're going to be testing on: your knowledge, your strength, and I think your agility. If I get that right. And then all of the characters start with different location. So you'll notice on the knowledge track there, we have a token at 4, one at 7, one at 9, and one at 12. So when it comes time to do the test, you always have the 2 dice that you'll be rolling. Depending on what's happened or what items you've got or the situation, you can get access to those purple dice as well, so you would have more dice to roll. The more dice you roll, the more likely you are to get a higher roll. So you would go and roll all the dice, see what the total number is. So let's say I get a 10. So in this case, my score would be 3 for this test, because at the 10 location, if you look at all the smaller numbers, there was 3 tokens. Now if I had rolled a 5, my score would have been a 1. Depending on what is happening, that might have been enough to pass. It might not have been enough to pass. So depending on the agility or the testing rolls, what's going to happen as you try to perform certain action in the story. As I mentioned, I really enjoyed this one. I'm excited I have since played the base game. I've acquired 2 of the expansions so that I would have more stories to go through. And I just find this is just such a satisfying experience to go through, especially with your spouse. Now, so the next one I talked about this month was Décorum. I've had Décorum for a little while and I hadn't played it for a bit. This is definitely on the lighter side. So the Destinies, you probably need to give yourself 1 to 2 hours to play. With this one, you can do as many different scenarios as you want. Each one probably would take 10 to 20 minutes maybe. So they're quick. So if you don't have a whole lot of time, you can do just the one. If you guys got a whole evening planned out, then you can do 2, 3, 4, 5 scenarios. So it's great in that way. This game is so interesting. The scenario is always that you're a couple of some sort coming together and moving in together. And then the card will kind of read out what the situation is, and then you have your personal card. Your partner has their own personal card, and it reads on there what you want in the way that the house is going to get decorated. It could be that, you know what, you don't want to have red and blue in the same room. So you don't like those color combinations. So you're okay with red, you're okay with blue, not in the same room. So different clues or different requirements that way. And you're trying to come up where everybody's criteria are matched. It was great. So let's look at the rating on this one. So for conversation, connection, potential, I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. It's a very simple game. So you can definitely have a whole conversation as you're playing. Your rules that you're trying to achieve are private, and so you don't share that information with you. So on your turn, you're either going to take an element away, add an element to the house, or swap it out. So as you're doing this, you're not explaining yourself. You could have a conversation as you're playing. Getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5. So it's right in the middle there. It's interesting to see because you don't give feedback. So it could be like, hey, I'm going to put this here. And it's like, I hate it. And on your turn, you remove it. And it's like, oh, okay. Then it was like, so seeing if they can kind of figure out what is your requirement. Say, okay, well, I've put, a lamp there, a blue lamp, and you didn't like it. And I've put a green lamp and you didn't like it. Like what it is that you're looking for. And it could just be that I cannot have 3 items in there. So we're already down to 2, so you just don't know and then just trying to click it together. It's interesting to see what they can come up with. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5. This is a cooperative game. You are both trying to get to the same goal of getting the house to meet everybody's requirements. As you're playing, you give very little feedback. So you could say, I hate it, I love it. It's like, I don't really care one way or another. So as you're trying to figure out what the rule is and you're trying to change up the house, some are fairly easy to get to. Some were harder. We didn't quite get them because every time you do an action, it keeps track and it moves. So I'll show you the game here. So it's 2 parts. So you have the house part and then you have the element part. So the first one is you have all the different elements. So you have a wall hanging, you have a curio item, or you have a lamp, and then they all come in different colors with the red, the yellow, the green, or the blue, and then each item has a different style. Maybe it's modern, maybe it's traditional, antique, retro, so it's you have all these different combinations and you're trying to put this onto the house. And then the house has the 4 bedroom and they all have a wall color and then different items that you can put in there. It's so satisfying to play. And then at certain time they're a heart to heart, so you could be like, okay, we're having a heart to heart now, and you could share one of your clue, and it's like, hey, you keep taking out the lamp, but my clue is I need to have a lamp in every room of the house. So, oh, that's why you keep taking it away. So you can kind of start sharing some information and keep going, and you'll be a few heart to heart, and you're trying to get the house to match everybody's criteria before that you run out of turns. Very neat game. Super quick, simple, but it's very satisfying. The next game that I talked about is Near and Far. And Near and Far is another very story-driven game. There's no app involved with this one. So you have the book that has the map, because you can do different maps. So it's scenarios, and you start here and then you kind of go to the next one and then you go to the next one. So your adventure progress as you play. At the top you have the village, and that's where you're kind of getting prepared before you go and branch out on your adventure. And then you have your player board, so you're not going to go alone. You're going to recruit people to come with you. You're going to try to make sure that your health is all the way up, that you have provision with you, and all the items that might help you along the way. And then once you're ready, you're going to go on the bigger map, and then you're going to start branching out and then coming across different scenarios and adventures. And it could be that, you come across a lake and the rock person is there and she's crying because she lost a little pebble children. What will you do? Will you offer to find them for her, or will you send her to the village you just crossed and say, hey, somebody's available to help you over there? Now, keep in mind, you have to do a test in order to be able to be successful in what you decide to do. So maybe it's like, well, I would help her, but I am not well equipped to deal with this right now. I better send her to the village. And now if you send her to the village, what type of reward does that give you? And what does that do to your reputation? And it's very interesting. The stories are neat. And as you kind of, depending on the number of players, some of the areas get blocked off. And we normally don't block off any area because we want to come across every stories. But then each map has its own set of stories that you come across. It's so neat. So let's look at the rating system on this one. So for conversation, connection, potential, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5. It's not as rigid as when you have the app that you got to pay attention to, but it definitely is. You got a story going on. So yeah, you can kind of chit chat a little bit in between, but it's not one where you can have a whole big conversation while you're playing. Getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. Because one person, when the person comes to a location, the other player is going to read out the scenario, and they're going to give them the option of what they can do. The person can see what the results are going to be. They don't know yet, and then they got to do their test. So it's interesting to see, how are you going to decide? What are you going to do? Are you going to be the good person? Are you going to be the bad person? Are you trying to build up your reputation? Are you trying to bring down your reputation? Because it could be that they have an item in their hand that they want to equip because it's very powerful, but they can only do it if their reputation is dipped down enough, and then afterward they could bring it back up, because at the end of the game, if you have a higher reputation, that gives you more points. So there's all sorts of things to consider, and it's interesting to see how they'll decide on what they're going to do. Hurt feelings and conflict, again, this one is a 2 out of 5. It's not cooperative. It's a race, and again, you're trying to get all of your tents off of your player board, and then when that happens, you score. So you're trying to get as much score as possible, but it's one of those where you're not interfering with each other too much, so the chances of conflict are lower. Now let me show you more pictures here. So this is where you can see a little bit better. So you have the village at the top where you can go and recruit people to join your team. You can get provision. You can, there's the different things you can do to get ready to go on the adventure. And when you're ready, you go onto the adventure board, and there is one location that's considered to be the village where you're at, and then you can start branching out from there. And as you go, it'll exhaust you. So when you kind of can't travel anymore, you can camp out there, kind of replenish your health, and then keep going further, because as every movement is going to cost you some time and energy. And when you come across new location, then you come across the different scenarios and you go through the story. This is another view of the board of a different time I had played. It's just such a satisfying game to play. Now, the next one I want to talk about is another scenario-based one, which is great actually for couples. And that one is called Fog of Love. So in Fog of Love, it's a game where you're going through basically a romantic comedy. So your character has met the other character, and sparks are flying, and you're going to start dating, and you're seeing if you can make the relationship work. But the goal is not just to make the relationship work. You also have to meet your personal individual goal. So can you as a couple come together and still be what would be the word, feel complete as an individual as well, and meet your personal goals. It's so interesting. It has a really neat tutorial system, because you don't read the rule book. You start flipping a card, and it reads you the rule as you play, tells you what to do. Okay, now you do this. Okay, and then the next rule card will come out. It's like, great, now that you've done this, you can do this. So as you're playing, the game is teaching you the game. So you need to have the cards all in a very specific way the first time you play, and then afterwards you can play all sorts of different scenarios. And there's a lot of different expansion that'll add different things. The in-laws, or maybe love during a pandemic, or all these different elements that you could come across as a couple. Let's get a look at the rating system on this one. So connection and conversation potential, I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. This one is up there because you're going to come across different scenarios where you're going to be like, okay, what would I do? You guys are going on a first date. Where would you like to go? And you score if you have matching answers, but you also want to answer for what your character would want to do. You're not playing this as you're playing this as your character. It's like, okay, and my character his goal is to have a lot of these symbols. And if I go karaoke, that's what I would do. But karaoke is not really going to help here, so probably I would pick this. And then you see what the other character is going to pick, and then you reveal. If you match, you gain certain things. If you don't match, different things happen. And you're trying to get to a position to see if you've accomplished enough similarity goals that you guys decide to stay together and so on. It is neat. Getting to know you, again, just because of those conversations. Because you're going through, it's like, oh, shit, I thought you would go. It's like, oh, yeah, I would go karaokeing, but you probably wouldn't go karaokeing. My character definitely wouldn't. He's like, oh, well, then I thought I'd pick karaoke because I figured you would pick karaoke. So you're having that back and forth conversation, learning about each other as well. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5, but I'm going to put a caveat on that. This is bringing up a lot of couples situation, and depending on how you would see yourself in it, it could be that this could flare up if you're dealing with a situation that the game brings up. So remember, you're not playing as you're playing as your character. It's an interesting activity to do with your spouse, but if you guys are going through some specific issues, that the game could potentially bring something up that reminds that could flare up those issues. Let me show you another picture. So this is the board when it first gets set up, and you can see those green cards with the item on it. Those are the tutorial cards, so as you draw them, it'll be starting to teach you, and it just tells you what to do. So learning the game was great. It was so neat. I'm excited to do a lot more of these scenarios and see how that goes. And then you have the cards. Oh, let me just fix my thing. I'm losing my headset. And then you have the cards that'll give you the different, because you'll have cards where you bring in different events, and you can pick which event you want to bring up. It's like, okay, well, I don't know if this one we would get right, so I'm going to try this one because I'm really trying to get these symbols. Or, so you bring up, it could be like your mother-in-law calls and she starts complaining about your partner. Do you, team up with your mother-in-law, trying to keep the mother-in-law happy? Do you team them up with your partner, or do you kind of take a neutral approach? Like, there's a bunch of different scenarios like that. And then kind of depending on what you do, how it affect, it's interesting. It's such a neat relationship-based game that it makes it really interesting. And that was all the games that I had for the game of the week this month, so be sure to tune in next month to see which games we'll be talking about. In the meantime, if you want to follow us on Instagram, my Instagram is Mel's_boardgame_room, and we also have Games and Couples. On Facebook, my Facebook page is Mel's Board Game Room, and there's also Games and Couple Love in the Age of Board Game, and the YouTube channel is Mel's Board Game Room and Games and Couple Love in the Age of Board Game. Bye, everybody.